Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. This is a big one, yes. Movies, Star Trek Generations. We made it. Star Trek Generations on It's All Been Trucked Before. Hey, we feel like we're already in bonus territory. We've seen so much Trek. We've got so much more to go, but get into your own bonus territory. Get all our special episodes. See us. If you're a Patreon member, you can look at us. See all the other goofy stuff we got going on. Just Keith's backgrounds alone on our Patreon are worth the price of admission. Plus, you get all the stuff from the mothership. It's all been done radio hour and much, much, much more. Don't cost much. Patreon.com/IABD. Right now, we did it. We made it. It's a movie. It's gonna be a long one. We're diving deep. Going where probably somebody's gone before, but not like the way we do it. Star Trek Generations on It's All Been Trucked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. Very special episode. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Stephen.
And half of Keith.
Call me Jim. I mean Jimmy-Jerome. Call me whatever you want, I don't care. We're here to talk about the film Star Trek Generations. First impressions of the half you saw, Keith.
The first impression was that I missed a lot of it.
Keith got his times mixed up and came in while Guinan was telling Picard about the Nexus.
How many times have you seen it, though?
A lot, but it's been decades.
Oh,
okay.
So
It's been probably at least 10 years for me, but I still remembered it very well. And not just because I just read both of the novelizations, but
I feel like that would help.
it did. But I felt like as I was reading it, I remembered all the scenes anyway. So we'll see. I mean, I'll talk more about those later, but yeah.
Well, I guess there were things that I started to remember like right as they were happening. But apart from that,
good movie, bad movie, mediocre movie.
there are some things that I think bothered me more this time through than would have at the time.
Okay.
Certainly, because again, decades younger, and we've seen so much more since then. But yeah, I guess we'll get to that as we get to it, because it's just some of them are written down sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my first impression is similar. You put Kirk in a movie, you've already got me in. And they start off with a lot of the good time fun. And actually, probably the funniest Next Generation episode ever while we're at it, I think. Some interesting stuff, the motion chip and this and that. I felt like it ends up lagging a little when it gets into we'll get into it deeper, but I felt like it didn't pack the emotional punch that we would have liked, and you and I kind of talked about that in the green room, Jimmy-Jerome. But anyway, so I think it was fun, but I get why it's not top of the list. Yeah, I'm from what the quick look I did on Wikipedia or whatever, sounds like I like it more than a lot of people did, but I think it sounds like it's divisive was one of the words that was out there. So
yeah, it definitely has mixed reviews and opinions over time. I like it. It's not like I don't feel as passionate about it as I do like the motion picture when I defend that.
Yeah.
It's not that level.
Yeah.
It is my second favorite of the next gen films, which might not have you looking forward to them that much. There are four.
There are four.
Yeah.
The next one is by far the best.
And that is
First Contact.
Yeah.
But Insurrection and Nemesis aren't great. I will say this is probably the most balanced of the Next Gen films. First Contact's relatively balanced too. I mean, Crusher got nothing to do here. But Troy had a moment, Geordi had a moment, Data had a moment, Riker had a couple moments, Worf had a moment. So I appreciate that it wasn't just Picard and Data. Picard was front and center because it was a Picard and Kirk movie, which makes sense. I think I still like this movie. I think what it made me nostalgic for was it was if very different in the Kirk scenes versus the Next Gen scenes.
Yes.
And I really love the first 6 films. Even if I'm ranking my top Star Trek films, Insurrection and Nemesis are 9 and 10 of the 10. Yeah. If we ignore Beyond the Kelvinverse.
Yes.
Like those 6 films are great. In my opinion. Even 1 and 3, which I know have their flag, and even 5. I like them all. I will watch all 6 of them over and over again. And I think that made me nostalgic here to the point where I just was really wishing by the end that Kirk survived it. And then we get to see him do a movie in the 24th century with old Spock and old Scotty, who we know exists. Maybe even McCoy with the millions layers of makeup on him.
Yeah.
Chekhov. I mean, they didn't establish any of them were dead yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have rather seen another movie with really old characters, and all the best lines were during the Kirk stuff.
Yes.
I know there were a few good lines for Next Gen characters, but Kirk, every line out of Shatner's mouth, for the most part, 80% of what he said was gold. And it made me nostalgic for another Kirk-centric film that we'll never get again.
I mean...
They could.
No, we can't. It did lock in for me, though, what my bonus is between seasons at the end of the season that we're barely into.
Yeah.
I already ordered you 2 copies. It's another book, sorry.
All right.
We're going to read The Ashes of Eden by William Shatner and Judith and Garfield Reeve-Stevens.
Okay.
Shatner wrote, I think, 12 books in this era after this movie with these 2 authors, and they start on Viridian 3 with Kirk's body being beamed out of his grave and revitalized, brought back. And so it's like 12 adventures of Kirk post-Generations in the 24th century. I know some of the later books get really confusing in the Mirror Universe stuff, and I think I've probably only read 7 or 8 of them. I don't think I read all 12. But Judith and Garfield Reeve-Stevens are good authors, and they help massage Shatner, and also Shatner was disappointed they killed him, so he wanted to keep the character going, and I approve. It's really good. And he uses, it's probably more Judith and Garfield than him, but he makes use of, Thomas Riker and some of the more obscure aspects of Next Generation era story, and DS9 and Voyager characters. He makes use of all of that.
Okay.
So, not all in Ashes of Eden. That's as it goes on. Ashes of Eden is very much a Kirk story, so I think you might enjoy reading it a what if Kirk doesn't die here.
Yes.
Or he dies, but it's not permanent. It's Spock-like that he comes back.
Yes.
So, that's my next bonus we'll do, if you 2 don't mind.
I'm in.
Cool. Okay, that was it for first impressions. I do think we should start with talking about the alternate opening that was not part of the movie, that's in both versions of the novelization, the orbital skydiving scene. So, Keith, if you've never seen it, essentially the movie was going to open before the Enterprise B stuff with Kirk having orbital skydove and Scotty and Chekhov are waiting for him on the ground. And then, he's basically talking about, tomorrow I'm going to do this even more drastic, reckless thing. And they're like, did you forget? We got to go in front of the cameras tomorrow for the Enterprise B. And he's like, it's very much setting up that he's out there doing reckless crap because for a year he's been into forced retirement and he's not handling it well. There is even a line in both the novelizations, I assume was cut from the script, that later, in the Nexus stuff, where he's or after the Nexus, where he's like, this was more fun than orbital skydiving because it actually mattered. And I was glad they didn't keep that line in the movie. It wouldn't have made sense. But I'm of 2 minds. I really think it's nice to just jump in with the Enterprise B stuff. But on the other hand, while we get some of the restlessness of Kirk, I think the orbital skydiving scene would have better sold the restlessness of Kirk. Yeah. That we didn't get as much from just the Enterprise B moments.
I'm with you, and it would add, 2 more minutes to the movie? It wasn't, it was under 2 hours, which...
Barely.
Yeah.
With that, it would have been 2 hours. Yeah. So we start with the Enterprise B stuff. It's an Excelsior-class ship, which always makes me excited. The back of the regular novelization has 40 pages of behind-the-scenes stuff, and they go through detail in graphic form the changes they made to the Excelsior model to make it the Enterprise B. So I was glad it's not just the Excelsior model with a new name on it. They did make a couple of tweaks. But I always get excited when I see an Excelsior class, so I love that the Enterprise B is Excelsior class. The champagne bottle is a nice thing, flooping through space. It's a Dom Perignon over the opening credits. I kind of wished it was a Chateau Picard. Chateau Picard was making wine back then, but I get why they didn't do it. And then we get a bunch of media, a bunch of press.
Yeah.
Which I don't remember. We've never seen, media in Star Trek before.
I wrote that down immediately, because I think we talked about it before, that we never really... There was the one episode of Generation where they were... Or am I mixing that up with Lower Decks? I know Lower Decks did it.
Oh, yeah, New Trek has done it.
Yeah, but
Star Trek Picard does media, too.
I thought there was a TNG episode where there was somebody...
I don't think so. I think you're thinking of MASH.
Maybe I am.
No, I think you are.
Those were great episodes of MASH.
They were. I do think it's a Lower Decks episode. But Star Trek Picard includes journalists in it as well.
Okay.
Not, heavily, not in every episode, but I like the idea that the Federation has a media service. Whoopi, not in the opening credits. I did some Googling, and she is uncredited for this film. Okay. She did not want a credit.
Interesting.
At the point this film came out in 1994, she was at her height of popularity.
Okay.
And there are some reports that she thought it would distract if her name was prominent.
Okay.
That is unconfirmed. I could not, I saw other people disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's the true story, but it makes sense. I know she was always credited Next Gen when she guest starred.
Mm-hmm.
The other Next Gen film she's in is a much, much briefer part, but she's uncredited for that as well. She just took no credits for the feature films. So they do ask, one of the reporters asked Kirk, how does it feel for the first time in 30 years that you're not in command? And I'm like, did that woman not do her research? Because Decker was the captain in the motion picture before Kirk took over, and that was less than 30 years ago.
That's right.
Because, at least according to the book, this Enterprise B sequence is 1 year after the Undiscovered Country. So if you're wondering timeline, it's just 1 year later. When he said they told him to come back to be decommissioned, and he's like, go that way out of there. Apparently he did it for days or maybe a week or two, but then he came home, they decommissioned, and this is a year later.
Was there an Enterprise A?
Yes, in Star Trek 5 and 6.
No, I mean, was it actually labeled A?
Yes, in Star Trek 5 and 6. Because the original Enterprise was destroyed in Star Trek 3, remember? With the Klingons?
Right.
And then they gave Kirk in Enterprise A at the end of Star Trek 4. That he flew around in 5 and 6.
It's just that I was wondering if they would have done that instead of just going right to B instead of... Because,
No, we saw the A.
Interesting.
But that is something that clicked on me is I know the Enterprise A was a refit Constitution class. So it wasn't new when Kirk got it. But it sure seems like they only let him fly it for 7-8 years at most.
Yeah.
And then they decommissioned it, and it's like, really? That ship still seemed pretty new to me when they took... I guess it was a refurbished. Refurbished doesn't last as long.
Well, I mean, do you see why I was thinking about that, though?
Yeah.
It seems like an odd thing to do to... If it's going to be the second ship, why would they put an A after it instead of...
I see. Yeah, that's an interesting point. This does complete the loop, though, because we'd already seen the Enterprise C in the Next Generation. So now we've seen no suffix through D. And, spoiler, in Star Trek First Contact, we'll meet the Enterprise E.
Okay.
I really think they just wanted to get this ship out of the way so they could design something new. But...
That's a valid point, I think.
As we're watching the press scene on the Enterprise B bridge, I just wrote so many good lines. It's just...
You wrote them?
Well.
I did. I did indeed.
How did you do...
Shatner itching to get out of the chair was great. That nothing will be delivered until Tuesday thing is great. I admit I've stolen a little bit of the universe journey.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Tractor beams.
I wrote that down, not to be
beams.
installed till Tuesday. And I love at the point where it's like, and then it gets to the, don't even say it, or whatever. Don't even
Don't tell me.
Don't
Tuesday.
tell me.
And Harriman doesn't answer. He just looks at...
I wanted him to say Monday. This is what I want, or Wednesday. But either way.
I thought he delivered it great.
No, he did.
Alan Rickman had already done Ferris Bueller, so we should talk about Captain Harriman.
Alan
was
Ruck,
played by Alan... I said Rickman, I meant Ruck. I'm sorry. Alan Rickman, very different actor. Alan Ruck, best known for Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Twister, which I just watched last night, Speed, The Happening, 118 credits here. I absolutely love Alan Ruck in everything I've ever seen him in.
Yeah. I think there's an argument that, well, maybe it's not a good one, but, for a while I was like, wow, man, Matthew Broderick went on and did all these things, but Alan Ruck
has done a lot.
He was Spin City, right?
Yeah.
Speed, Succession.
Oh, that guy.
Succession more recently, yeah. He did a fan Star Trek of Gods and Man as Captain Harriman, but this is his only on-screen official.
And I know I'm leaving out some other stuff too, but the guy, he's done all right.
He has 118 credits.
Yeah.
Only 118. Just for you. Just for you. No, I absolutely adore Alan Ruck. I think he's fantastic. Every time I see him, I get excited. And I think he was pitch perfect here. I think if he'd been any bigger, it would have been bad.
And that's where I thought it was going to go. And I was like, nope, he just plays that perfectly. Well, Shatner, his thing is kind of over the top. Just some people. But
yeah.
I thought, but it makes sense, I think, if you're Kirk, that if you're on a ship, you are just like, he's just... You're just instinctive, like, wait, you're right, that's not me. And I like the interplay with those guys.
Well, and Scotty and Chekhov giving him crap about, brought a tear to my eye. Oh, Captain, something wrong with your chair? I loved it. I loved it so much.
I love that. I wrote down, I was okay, like, Sulu's daughter, I'm not apologizing. I teared up with that.
Sulu's daughter, absolutely. Demora Sulu, played by Jacqueline Kim, who's best known for this role, according to IMDb.
Yep.
The 1997 movie Volcano, 2015 Advantageous and 2001 The Hollywood Sign, she has only 22 credits.
Yeah.
So really not very much at all. I certainly didn't recognize her from anything. She was in the Mighty Ducks, the original Mighty Ducks before this. I don't know if I remember.
Something else, but I don't...
She was in 2 episodes of Xena, episode of ER, 1 episode of The West Wing. But yeah, she really hasn't done much.
Yeah.
Only like 3 credits in the last decade, unfortunately. I will say there are 4 novels that feature Captain Harriman and Ensign Sulu and some people. Peter David wrote 2 of them.
Okay.
And then they did 2 others. And I appreciated getting to know that crew a little bit more, especially because this is Harriman's first captainship, and you know that has to really shake you and mess with how you become a captain later. Mm-hmm. We also, Stephen and I both clocked at navigation Glenn Morshower, who we all love. The Resident, Bloodline, Transformers Dark of the Moon, 24. So many things.
Yeah, he was just on it.
237 IMDb credits.
Yeah.
He was in an episode of Next Gen, wasn't he? Standing at Wharf Station behind the...
I think you're right. Yeah.
Behind the thing. He'll do an episode of Enterprise as well, and an episode of Voyager.
Yeah, he shows up in everything as that guy, as the security guy, the whatever, yeah.
Also, didn't know if you noticed on the bridge, Tim Russ was one of the officers.
I did notice him right away.
He did not have the Vulcan ears, so in canon that is not Tuvok. However, we know from canon on Voyager that Tuvok lived in this era and at least served under Sulu on the Excelsior, so we don't know if this is Tuvok or not without the ears, but...
Could be undercover, could have had some sort of surgery.
Something, but
So which one is the real one?
I just think it was worth bringing up that Tim Russ was on the bridge again.
Yeah.
We're about to get him as a main character in Voyager here very, very soon.
Oh, yeah.
I loved when they said the medical staff wasn't available till Tuesday and Chekhov takes command. It's funny because Chekhov and Scotty are giving Kirk such crap about itching to do something. And then as soon as Kirk steps up, at Harriman's invitation, to his credit, Chekhov and Scotty immediately jump up too. And I liked that. And I liked Chekhov playing doctor.
I mean, it makes sense that, like, I thought they played it perfectly, they could have gone the extreme, like, well, this is my ship and I need to prove myself.
Yep.
Which would make sense too, but I think if you got these 3 guys over here, it's to use a sports term. If you got the 27 Yankees over here, why would you be like, no, we got this? Like, no, you're gonna let Babe Ruth hit.
And I think that is a huge credit to Harriman that he recognizes that and invites it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because if it was Styles or somebody that we've seen plenty of captains and admirals and commodores that would not have done that.
Yeah.
And I think this movie would have been far inferior if we had a captain that fought against them helping.
Yeah. So. And I'll back up a little. Once again, these movies love Starship Dry Dock.
We didn't
get any Starship porn, but we did get Dry Dock, which is always good. And then, of course, I always love the classic con uniforms for my first fashion note.
Yes.
But as soon as Kirk is like, I'll go down, I'm like, okay.
Well, before we do that, we'll get that in a second. But the uniforms, Scotty wore one with a yellow braid instead of white, which is different than what he wore in the movies.
Yeah. I thought it just looked discolored, but that makes sense.
No, there were a number of people, Tim Russ was one of them, wearing yellow. I think it was a departmental thing.
Okay.
But, yeah. So, you're right. Harriman offers to go, and Kirk's in the captain's chair. And I like that we get the moment of him sitting in the captain's chair first, before he says, no, your place is on the bridge.
Well, do you think that him taking over for Decker so many years ago played a part of that? Because I think even then, I don't think he felt right about it.
Yeah.
We all felt like, well, no. It's what Spock says in Wrath of Khan, anything else is a waste of material. You are supposed to be a starship captain, but
and I think that comes back in this when he's talking to Picard, which we'll get to later about don't let them get you off the bridge of the ship.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of through line between the Nexus stuff for Kirk and this Enterprise B scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, and through line back to his films and who Kirk is. Yeah. The Nexus might explain Guinan. In the book, it hints that this explains her sixth sense. Picard even says outright, this is why you have the sixth sense, the Nexus, in the book. And she's like, yes. That she's kind of out of time in a certain way. There's the echo of her in the Nexus that still exists. And so not all El-Orians have the powers that Guinan does.
So does she see dead people then?
Apparently.
If she has a sixth sense?
Yeah, probably.
As soon as they set him down, I'm like, oh, this is where he's going to die.
Yeah.
And I wrote predictable, but also, I call it the Colleen Doctrine, and it's something we talk about a lot, which is if you do dangerous things, people are going to die. So it makes sense that finally it got him, even though I knew it didn't get him, but it did.
If he'd stand on the bridge, he wouldn't have, right? Like, he always stayed on the bridge before.
Right.
He leaves the bridge, he gets it.
Yeah. So
it would have been better if he was in a pod and Harriman accidentally hit a button on the chair handle. I've got so many alternates as we go. That's one of them.
It's funny you should say that.
That's a good one.
Oh, why is that funny?
You'll see.
Okay. But that said,
I still choke up when Scotty says, have Chekhov meet me, and then he gets down there and Chekhov asks if anyone was in here. Because we know Chekhov missed that exchange.
Yep.
I get choked up. Before we move on from the 23rd century, I do want to talk... I'm going to bring up both of these books a couple times. They wrote the full novelization and the junior novelization, because at this time they were doing the junior novelizations. This was actually the 10th.
Huh.
They'd already done 5 of the Next Gen Starfleet Academies and 4 of the DS9 Jake and Nog young adult novels. So this was the 10th young adult in the series.
Where do they make the distinction?
It's written very differently. I'm going to read a passage from both to show you.
No, I mean on the cover. Is your thumb...
Oh, the cover is exactly the same.
I like that it's an old Kirk picture on the cover.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Yeah, this was the poster. This was the official poster of the movie. So
wait, is it that logo at the right corner?
Pocketbook Star Trek? Yeah. Oh, you're asking where on the cover it says it's a young adult novelization? Yes. I see nothing on here. It's exactly the...
I feel like young adult wasn't a term back then.
But I mean, the pocketbook might
They do have different authors. They have different authors, and the purple circle has different text. But as I mentioned to Stephen, the 8 pages of color photos in both are the exact same photos with the exact same captions. So they didn't bother to do that.
What is young adult? Is that...
What do you mean?
Who does that cover? Because in my mind, when this came out, I was a young adult when I was 27 or whatever.
This covers like teenagers or younger.
Okay, that makes...
Preteens.
That's right.
Nothing on the title page either to differentiate. So, title-wise, they both look identical. Anyway, the official novelization, the young adult only has what we saw on screen. Well, it has the orbital skydiving scene and then the Enterprise B scene. This novel, 1/3 of the entire novel is set before Kirk disappears from the Nexus. There are several more scenes, and I think these are what we would have gotten had the whole original cast signed on, because they were all invited. In fact, Nimoy was invited to direct the film, too.
Oh, wow.
And he turned it down, because he said Spock was extraneous. So, the parts they'd written for Spock made him seem extraneous to the story. And I agree, reading through, he and McCoy are there as set dressing for Kirk. But what it starts, I want to walk through some of the scenes that you guys missed out, because I think this would be a better movie.
Well, first, don't you think it's just odd that he essentially used the argument that would be illogical for him to be in it?
Ha!
It's just kind of weird.
I didn't say that word, but I love it.
Yeah, to jump ahead to a later movie, he doesn't seem extraneous in the first Kelvin universe.
Oh God, don't. Nah. We'll get to that.
I know.
So the first scene in the novelization is on the Enterprise A in Kirk's quarters as he's packing up for decommissioning. So like the week after Star Trek VI. And Spock and McCoy come to his quarters on the last night, and they all exchange gifts. They both brought gifts for each other, and he has gifts for them. The clock that we see in the Nexus, he gives that to Bones in that scene. So I love that.
Okay.
They talk a lot. Kirk talks a lot in his internal monologue about feeling lost but not anger like he did the last time. And he's also honored that the entire bridge crew decided to retire with him. Not Sulu, because he's captain, but Chekhov, Scotty, Uhura, McCoy, and Spock are all retiring with him. So none of them are continuing on. And Starfleet, they're decommissioning the ship, and he talks about Carol's waiting. I can't wait to go meet up with Carol. She was in an accident and injured recently, and he right before Star Trek VI, and when he left her bedside, she hadn't woken up, but he was sure she would, and he gets her on the call, and just through a screen conversation after Spock and McCoy leave, and she's okay, she's gonna recover, and he proposes marriage and says, now I'm retired, we're gonna spend time together. She declines and says, my job is I gotta rebuild my research station that was attacked and where I was injured. You can't sit still. You need to move. And she's like, I will offer you a job if you want to work for me, and I'll have you traveling and getting things for me. And he's not sure he wants that because he wants to be with her, but she's like, you and I both know you can't be with me. And he realizes she's probably right. He would get really restless. But I love that whole bit. After Kirk's death, we get a funeral scene with the original crew coming to get together after the Enterprise B stuff. Chekhov has contacted the girl from the way to Eden and invited her as his date to the funeral, but she's engaged, so he can't. She won't go with him. Sulu is on the Excelsior, so he's going to miss the funeral, unfortunately. But Spock and McCoy are there, and it's really sad. And I think that's what DeForest Kelley and Leonard Nimoy declined on, was you have us exchanging gifts, and we're at his funeral, but we don't have plot. We're just there as set dressing for him. Yeah. And they have another scene in the Nexus, which we'll talk about when we get to the Nexus parts, but it's still very much... And again, like, Sulu's in the Nexus scene, because he's not in these scenes. But Chekhov and Sky Uhura don't get any more to do in these scenes. I mean, they're at the memorial, and they're at the scene in the Nexus, and that's it. So I get why they all turned it down, except for Koenig and Duran.
But why? I don't know. It's just such a strange... I've never been at that level, I guess, where I would be in a... I would say, I don't want to be in a Star Trek movie because...
Nimoy at that point was pursuing other creative projects.
That's what that's what I was gonna say. Like 15 years earlier, he might have been like, all right. Or actually, 15 years earlier, he would have been
15 years later, he would have been all right.
Yeah. Yes.
We also talked about, before you showed up behind the scenes, that they did want Carol Marcus in the film for the Nexus scene, and they probably would have done the scene with the call. But Paramount overruled that and refused to allow her because they said, we expect most of this audience will have never seen a Star Trek film, or they might be next-gen fans, and nobody's going to know who Carol Marcus is, and it's just going to confuse audiences. So they would not allow her in the film.
That doesn't make putting in a random person.
So the writers said, if you're not going to give us Bibi Besh, can we have Edith Keeler for the Nexus scene? And Paramount again said, no, we don't want anybody you've seen before.
Why? That doesn't make any...
In retrospect, I agree with you. This is stupid business decisions of the 90s. I tried to put myself back in a TV exec or film exec position in the 90s. And back then, franchises and world building wasn't the thing it is now.
Yeah.
But I still think it was short-sighted and stupid.
Right. What would it have hurt? I don't understand what.
That was my argument. What's it really going to hurt?
Yeah.
Because the Antonia, we barely see her. She's basically off screen. I'm not even sure the woman on the horse was the same as doing the voice. Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah. They did not cast an actress to be Antonia. There wasn't more of her they cut. They did not want to see her. And when you think about it, it's like, is that less confusing? I don't think it's less confusing. I don't see how it is. I mean, obviously it was Carol. We get a bedroom scene. We don't just go to the horse barn. Yeah. We have to have a scene with her. But that doesn't make it confusing. We just know he's got a history with her the same way here. We don't have to rehash the whole history.
Right. And, I mean, why give somebody to Picard who's just some random woman? That doesn't... Then why do that?
The Picard, we'll get to that too. I've got words about her as well when we get to the Nexus.
I also think if you're
should have been Crusher. Should have been Crusher.
That too.
If you're going to do a Kirk funeral, that's almost just, you know what, that's a TOS movie.
Sorry, I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the other scene in the Nexus. Because they did... Kirk in the Nexus, it started with his wedding to Carol Marcus in the Nexus. He sees Scotty, Sulu, and Uhura sitting in the front row, and Spock is there with a date that we've never seen before, but it's a big deal. McCoy's his best man, so McCoy and Kirk are peeking through the curtain. McCoy snuck him some liquor, and then Sulu shows up because he's officiating. And the reason Spock's not officiating or best man is they weren't sure he was going to make it. But then he made it, and he asked if he could bring a friend. And so McCoy keeps calling it a date, and Kirk keeps saying, it's a friend. And McCoy's like, nope, it's a date. But then you see in the front row, Sam Kirk and his family sitting in the audience. And Matt and Will Decker sitting in the audience. And that would have been such a cool scene to get. And David walks Carol down the aisle and has no anger giving her away to Kirk. Yeah. And I would really love to see that scene.
Like I said, I loved all the nostalgia. It's not all nostalgia, it's just...
It would have been nostalgia, but... But then we get in Kirk's headcanon in the novelization, as he's talking about this, that he's gone through this wedding several times. Sometimes it's Carol, sometimes it's Edith Keeler, sometimes it's Ruth.
That's what I was going to bring her up.
Yeah. He keeps changing, and so he's had time to realize he's in the Nexus, whereas the movie, it's just like, he just got here, and it's like, I really like to see. But I do, while we're talking about the Nexus, and I know we're going to go back and do more, but it's such a Pike-esque ending had he stayed in the Nexus. The horseback riding and everything, I'm like, it's the cage. It's the freaking cage.
Right.
So does that cheapen Pike's ending of choosing to stay in the illusion while Kirk leaves the illusion? I don't think it cheapens it because the details are different and they're two very different men with very different goals in the moment. But part of it almost feels like a F you to Pike.
I think that's a good point. I think Pike was much more like, I don't know how much longer Pike stays on the ship regardless of that baffle plate and all that stuff. So
well, he's already promoted before the baffle plate. He's not so
you're right.
with the baffle plate.
You're right.
But the thing with, I think some of the details that matter are that Pike can't leave the Nexus and do something heroic.
Yes.
This is his best chance at what's left of life, whereas Kirk still is able-bodied.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that's different.
Well, and the other thing is, it's that illusion of Susan Oliver.
Also, Vina's real.
She is real.
The
You're
look
right.
isn't real, but the woman is real.
Yeah, you're right.
And they have a real emotional connection.
Yeah,
Whereas anybody Kirk's within the Nexus is completely fake.
That's a good distinction.
And also Pike's just a different person. Kirk has to be action. I don't think Pike has to be action.
Well, and I think they allude to that in that. I'm jumping way ahead to Strange New Worlds, but it starts with Pike at his house in Wyoming or Montana or whatever it is, making eggs or whatever.
Alaska, that's right. No.
Was it Alaska?
No, that's...
Oh, okay. Those scenes you described with the wedding and the funeral, I think for a movie that's about... part of it is, we got to do the Kirk one, then we got to do the Picard one. I think that's part of it, too. Now
the budget would have went way up for guest stars.
Yeah. Today we just do the 4-hour, what's the
I say it would have been at least 2.5 hours.
Who's our Watchman? Zack Snyder. We'd have done the 4-hour Zack Snyder thing.
That's a really excellent point. What if you split this movie in half?
Yes.
Oh.
And we end it not... Where do we end it? Because you don't want to end it when Kirk goes into the Nexus. We need some next gen in it. You don't want to end it when Soren wins because that's too close to the end.
Yeah.
So do you end it where, Geordi is captured by the Duras sisters and things are looking grim and they don't know what his plan is?
Yeah.
Is that where you end it? Or do you commit to a full movie with Kirk and friends and then they do just the Nexus in the second part?
Yeah.
That would have been kind of cool too. Yeah. Star Trek 7 with Kirk and friends. Star Trek
Especially
8.
If that's your...
That makes a lot more sense.
We're saying goodbye to these guys.
But they still do the funeral scene, or not the funeral scene. Funeral scene is how you end the 7th movie. Or open the 8th, either way.
Right, yeah.
Open the 8th because then that makes more sense for using them again in the wedding.
Yeah.
And then they can have more to do leading up to it. So you open the 8th with the funeral scene and then do 78 years later. We got it. Let's go back in time.
Now you just get to the Nexus to do have to go to a mountaintop.
This movie literally came out 30 years ago. 78 years later.
Yeah, and I knew immediately, holodeck.
Well, yeah. So
but I wasn't mad about it.
I'm pretty sure they filmed it in the lot in a tank instead of on the seat.
Yeah. Instead of on a holodeck.
But there is but there is an orange buoy in the water. And I'm like, why is that there? Not for historical accuracy.
Yeah.
Also, the extras. At first, I'm like, are those just other crewmen we haven't seen? But based on where the arch of the X of the holodeck is, at least half of those people are not crewmen. I would have loved to have seen Barclay climbing the rigging.
Yeah, I thought Barclay might.
He'll be in First Contact. He'll be in First Contact. He's also going to do a ton of Voyager episodes.
Okay.
And by a ton, I mean 5 or 7.
But I thought he might show up when things were going wrong also in engineering, but yeah.
I would have loved a Barclay cameo, but there was not room for him, legitimately. I do think Agawa should have got to be on the ship since she was in the episode anyway. She had no lines, but she's in the movie, so put her on the ship. Our friend, one of our favorite extras, or one of my favorite extras that I noticed in all the episodes she's in, her name is, hang on, I'm on IMDb, because Tracy Coco?
Yes.
She was prominently on the bridge in navigation. She was prominently in 10 Forward. I was like, oh, they brought her over from the series. I liked that a lot. So, there's a line in the novelization. There's actually quite a few lines in the novelization that, of course, are not in the movie. But there are some lines that are in both versions that aren't in the movie that I'm like, that was in the script and you cut it. And there is a line in both versions where Dr. Crusher, as Worf goes out on the plank, Dr. Crusher leans over to Geordi and goes, have you engaged the holodeck safety protocols? And he says, I don't remember. And
I thought about
the
that.
reason they cut that, though, I think, is so you don't realize for sure they're on the holodeck. You might suspect it,
Sure.
but it ruins that, and I'm glad they cut it.
That makes sense.
I love the line about remove the plank. Number 1, it's retract the plank. I love that Picard doesn't have a problem that he did it. It's just a problem with how the terminology.
It seemed like, and actually like got that bit of like, oh, he's going in the water. Oh, no, he's not. Oh, he's going in. No, he's not. And and then it's that silly thing.
This scene, I argue, would not happen without all good things. Picard having fun with the crew was not something that would have happened before the series finale.
Yeah.
And I love that we got something that mattered too, right? Because that was such a pivotal scene where he joins the poker game that I needed something in this movie to show that he's bonding with them.
Yeah. And
there's a throwaway line in the novelization where they're talking about the plank that Worf's jumping, and obviously the line that stays in the movie is no one's ever made it, which makes you think every promotion ceremony has been this, which again doesn't make sense with Picard not bonding. But there's a line in the book where one of the characters, I think Picard says to Riker, don't you think that's a little much removing the plank? And Riker says, when we did Troy's promotion in ancient Rome, we threw her to the lions. So now I kind of want to see that.
I like that.
Which, I like the idea better that it's different every time.
I do
it's
too.
The same.
I do too. And so one of my next fashion note, maybe my last one. This crew especially, and maybe, so I kind of gets, always looks good in period costumes.
Yes.
They all look just...
The holodeck scenes, whether you like the holodeck or not, always look good.
Yes. And I just thought, this crew, when they did the Robin Hood episode, I didn't love that episode, but I love seeing them, and they look like they're having fun. And I was trying to think, did TOS, they did a bunch of period stuff, but I don't know if it works.
But they were never...
Because it was always like, oh, we're visiting the Nazi planet. Maybe the gangster planet, that was...
So
but it's not exactly the same.
No, it's not. Yeah. This seems like a good time to bring up the action figures from this movie. They made 16 of them.
Wow.
I did buy the whole line. Not at the time. I bought them on eBay like a couple of years ago. They're in boxes. You get Kirk, Spock, and... not Spock. Yeah. Kirk, Scotty, and Chekhov in the 24th century uniforms, which I'm pretty sure Scotty's is white, not yellow, so they didn't fix it. Something that's common among almost every action figure in this set is their elbows and knees don't bend, so they're automatically inferior to all the other playmates. I don't know why. You get one of each of the 7, but only Data and Geordi have the new uniforms, where the color's on the top. Everybody else has the old ones. You get Soren in full black jumpsuit, no coat, because the coat was too complicated, I guess, to do. You get the Duras sisters.
Nice.
You get Kirk in the skydiving outfit.
Yeah.
You get Guinan in the purple. Mm-hmm. And you get Worf in the sailing ship outfit.
Okay.
So you get 2 Worfs. Worf and Kirk are the only 2 that they had 2 of in this line. And then you get Larson Betor as well, because they deserved action figures. But it really bothered me about the costumes. It also bothers me that on the back of these, Kirk's name is several places depending on which action figure you're buying. Some of them list him as Admiral and some list him as Captain.
Admiral.
He is a captain in this movie. So the Admiral is erroneous. They also put on the back of all of them Lieutenant Commander Riker. When did he get demoted? He's been a commander since PowerPoint Station. But it's mainly the uniforms that annoy me. And actually the picture on the back of the box shows Geordi and Data in the uniforms with the color on the top, but I'm looking at the action figures now, and they actually have the old uniforms in the action figures. It's just the badge that's changed. Did you notice the new badge?
Yes.
Because it doesn't have the circle behind it. It has the oval behind it. It has like the bar thing that DS9's been using.
Yeah.
So, funny story. They were told as a mandate that they needed new uniforms for the film, but time was running out. Things weren't working. They built them new uniforms that are pretty much the same as the old with the black top and the color. We don't actually see them in the film, but that's what the action figures are. So they're a slight variation on the television show uniforms, but they're mainly the same color-wise. Okay. What happened was they started filming, they did a couple days of filming, decided the new uniforms they built weren't working, scrapped them. Went back to filming, but said the studio is still requiring we have new uniforms. So they went to the DS9 and Voyager racks. And Picard, Riker, Data, and Geordi are the only 4 main characters that appear in the new uniforms. Okay. Everybody else are extras, and they had a whole rack of extras so anybody could wear them. Picard, Riker, Geordi, and Data are wearing Cisco, O'Brien, and from Voyager, Kim and Paris's uniforms.
Oh, wow.
They took 4 main characters off the rack, and that's why they don't fit quite right.
Huh.
But the studio wanted new uniforms, and that's how they got around it. And you'll notice in some scenes they're still wearing their TV uniforms, but in some scenes they aren't. Notably, once Geordi, Data, and Riker switch, they stay switched. Picard's the only one in the final scene that goes back after switching, I assume because his new uniform was so dirty. And they're already cleaning it, so Paris... I assume he wore Paris's and Riker wore Cisco's. It got so dirty that they had to clean it. But the fact that they grabbed other people off the rack, the whole thing was just a mess. The uniform was a mess.
And I'm looking from 2024 perspective, but it's just always like, why are we cutting corners? But
it's because
back then
they went straight into filming from the TV show.
Right.
DS9 and Voyager went on their summer hiatus. Well, Voyager hadn't started yet; they were in pre-production, but DS9 went on their summer hiatus, and they were using the Next Gen and DS9 sets, which you may not have noticed, but they actually gave them more detail. The bridge has a better built-out ceiling. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
The Captain, Riker, and Troy's chairs are actually on a raised platform, which brings them closer to Worf, which they were never during the series, but they wanted to do and didn't have time to do it. Stellar cartography. We only saw stellar cartography once in the series because Picard was into the chick. Completely new set.
Yes.
Data's quarters. So many more knickknacks than he had in the series. So they did build up the sets, but they only took a week or 2 off to build those while they were filming on location. It was so rushed to get this movie out by Christmas, 6 months after the show went off the air. That's where, the Enterprise B is definitely the redressed battle bridge, which was the redressed movie bridge. The Klingon Bird of Prey, I think I mentioned, is definitely the same Klingon Bird of Prey that's in 5 of the 6 original films. Rathicon's the only one that doesn't have it. Motion Picture 3, 4, 5, 6 all have the same old... That's why... It makes sense for the plot, Lursa and Betor are in an old version, but that's why... Logistically, they're in an old Bird of Prey because that's what they had built.
One more note on them being on the ship. The
Sure. Yes.
Also harkens back to one of Gene Roddenberry's original pitches was, Wagons West or whatever. But the other one was Horatio Hornblower novels. So this was very all right, we're finally getting that in here.
I loved seeing the sailing ship, and I love that it panned up to Enterprise. I also really love the transition of 78 years later, and then it looks like it's 400 years ago.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a cool thing.
And I know this is setting up the emotion ship for the movie, but when Data comes over and Crusher is like, well, it's called fun, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, did he forget all his training he got from Joe Piscopo?
He
from
did.
Space Joe Piscopo?
Well, it never really clicked. It never. Remember, he was still struggling with it.
You're right. So, and then my next question, my follow-up on that is it funny when he pushes her in?
No.
I laughed.
It's funny from an audience, yes.
But if I was there, and that's where I landed, was like, I laughed watching it, but if I was there, I'd have been like, what are you doing?
I think it helps with the transition, because you're going from this very fun scene into Picard finding out his brother and nephew are dead.
Yeah.
And so it helps already take the tone down before we get that moment. And I know we don't find out in that scene why he's upset. But they do explain in the book it is just 3 lines of text from Marie, Robert's wife, because she just can't bring herself to send him a video or audio message. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
In fact, the contents of the message are in the book. It basically says, Robert and Renee died in a fire. The funeral's next Wednesday. I understand if you can't make it. And that's it. And I assume he doesn't make it for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought, I mentioned to this, Keith wasn't here, but I mentioned to Steven during the movie, it would have been really funny if when Picard's reading that and his face drops, we then pan over to the screen and it says, Captain Kirk died 78 years ago. Because it came right after the Kirk death scene.
Yeah.
Obviously that would have made sense. What really throws me about the sets in this movie is I know they're the Next Generation sets with slight upgrades, but the lighting is 1,000% different.
Yes.
You're used to those bright TV, and now all of a sudden it's dark and shadowy.
Yeah.
And I get that in Picard's quarters, I get that in his ready room with him dealing, but the bridge should have been brightly lit, shouldn't it have?
Yeah, every shot when Troy takes over.
No, it wasn't.
When Troy takes over the helm or whatever, every shot of her was like, and I've been doing this for 7 years of how beautiful Marina Sirtis is, but it made her look even more beautiful. It was just
I'm not saying it wasn't flattering. It was on all of them.
But I agree with you that it was like
jarring.
What ship are we on?
I think they should have kept like the bridge and sickbay and the hallways brightly lit to make the transition less jarring. I will say, because spoiler, next movie we have a whole new Enterprise that's much more dark in general.
Okay.
Like it's no carpet, nothing. It goes. I feel like all of the new Trek bridges are based on the Enterprise E, which is weird. I guess fashion always comes back around, right? You had a trend, then the carpet came about, then you went back to this, I guess. It's because that one is so dark, it occurred to me that this helps ease that transition. But I honestly think they should have had some carpet on the freaking Enterprise E. So I think it shouldn't have been so jarring.
Yes.
It's a completely very different looking Enterprise.
I mean, I know it's, hey, we're doing a movie, it's not a TV show now, but still, there should be some continuity, you would think.
A little bit more than there was.
Yes.
Data gets the emotion chip. The scene of him drinking and Sanger Volding. At least 50% of the good lines in the Next Gen era are Data lines. This movie. It's so... And I get why he asked for more, even though it's disgusting.
I can tell you I did the same thing last night.
Well,
and I don't even have an emotion chip.
I've talked to my daughter about, she's like, why do you watch movies that make you cry? And I'm like, because I like movies that make me feel something.
Yep.
So I get that.
I will mention when they're putting the emotion chip in. I love any time... I've said before, I love any time we see inside Data's head.
And that was an upgrade for the movie, for sure. It was better than it ever looked.
Yep.
Data laughing at the Farpoint joke.
Yeah.
I looked back and I really wish that had actually been in Encounter Farpoint. It wasn't. It was an off-screen joke.
Okay.
I really wish there was some joke they could have taken from that, but I think they were just too serious in the first season to have anything.
Yeah. I was like, oh, we're already getting into TNG nostalgia.
It would have been better if it was one of Joe Piscopo's jokes, just to make the continuity.
Yeah. Spot, of course, shows up.
Yes.
We'll have another spot later for Spot.
Yep.
This is why this movie might edge out First Contact for Steven just because of the cat.
And then
First Contact's really
the other thing is there, and it probably only happens twice, but I wrote down a lot, where people are like, 14 survivors out of 189. 35 survivors out of 270. Is that necessary or not?
I mean,
is that information I guess...
I think so. In the Enterprise B scene, it was really helped with the weight of what was happening.
Yes.
The Armagosa Observatory, it made sense for the plot, but then it did feel extraneous.
Yeah. That's what I felt. While we're talking about nostalgia and references to other things, so at one point, Saren takes out an old timey watch.
Yeah.
So,
That's in the action figure. He gets the watch.
Okay. So
nice.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen Time After Time with Malcolm McDowell and Mary Steenburgen. They met there.
Love those actors.
Got married. Great movie. He plays H.G. Wells, who actually gets in his own time machine.
Now I really want to see that.
Jack the Ripper comes to modern day San Francisco.
I'm making a note right now.
That would be a great bonus movie. I think it's Time After Time. I think I have it right.
Figure it out.
David Warner's in it too. He's great. But anyway, in that movie, he's constantly taking out that watch. That plays. So I think that was it. I think
probably.
That was, hey, you guys love Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah.
Here you go. So.
We have not talked about Malcolm McDowell yet. Who plays Sauron. We kind of skipped over that he was in the Enterprise B scene along with Whoopi, of course.
Yep.
Because they're both Elorians. Malcolm McDowell, best known for A Clockwork Orange.
I would hope.
This movie, according to IMDb. This is second.
What?
Time After Time is third.
What?
From 1979.
Yep.
And then Halloween from 2007 is fourth. He has 281 credits, so I'm sure we have room to... Only 281 credits. So I'm sure we have room to debate. I do think this was a very prominent role for him because this movie did well.
Yeah.
And Clockwork Orange, obviously.
Yeah. How old is he? Because I was trying to figure out how his age compared to Shatner's. He was
born in 1943. So when this movie came out and filmed, because it was filmed in 94 and came out in 94.
Okay, so he's not
he would
that
have been
much younger.
49.
Okay,
or 51. 51.
Yeah.
51.
So he's Shatner's age when Shatner did Khan. Okay. But, alright, so that makes sense. Because I was like, God.
He does look older than 50.
Wow.
He does look older than 50.
Yeah.
Time After Time is the movie. Now.
Yes,
It's a lot older than I would have expected.
I saw it in the theaters.
I forgot.
Highly recommend it.
Malcolm McDowell was in the reboot of Gossip Girl, which I've only watched the pilot of.
Oh, wow.
I love the old Gossip Girl. I need to watch it.
He was on Community.
Now that I know Malcolm McDowell's in it, I'm more likely to
Blue
watch it.
Thunder, and I know I'm forgetting a bunch of other credits.
He's got so many. I've been a fan for a long time. I've still never seen A Clockwork Orange, which I know is awful. Mozart in the Jungle.
Oh, I thought you were saying the movie.
It's awful that I haven't seen it.
It took me a second.
Mozart in the Jungle, I only watched the pilot I loved, but he's in that. He starred in that.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be up there over some of these roles. He also did 40 episodes of Franklin and Bash. I did watch that show with Mark Paul Gosselaar and what's his face?
I'm not coming up with
Breckin Meyer.
Yes.
I found it before I looked it up.
Nicely done.
I found it in my head. Yeah, only 2 episodes of Community, 37 episodes of Metalocalypse,
I just got
he's on that.
11 episodes of Entourage.
Yeah.
I've seen Entourage every episode, so basically a wonderful, awesome actor.
Yeah.
Speaking of nostalgia, because we were talking about that, they still have photo albums in the 24th century. You'd have to really make a point of replicating it. And if you replicate, the replicator would have the pattern buffer, so you don't need to find it. You can just replicate it again.
Yeah.
Unless it's just for the matter of, it would be nice to have the dusty one, because then it also reminds me of Lost the Enterprise.
Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't.
And like glittery frames around the photos. Somebody took time to do that.
I'm surprised they didn't go, and we go back to TOS. We're surprised with stuff, but I'm surprised it wasn't more of an electronic.
It should have been electronic.
Now, yeah.
It should have been.
So the emotion chip makes you punny? Keith, can you? Well, this is what we got.
Keith, when did you get your emotion chips? 9 years ago, right before I met you?
Did that you start making more puns then, or just the same level?
The problem is it just makes time blend together and it's really hard to tell.
The emotion chip will be in the rest of Data.
Okay, so he's struggling.
Oh yeah, he's gonna have it. Stellar cartography of the set. Yeah. They actually did that on blue screen. I remember seeing the photos back in the day. Mm-hmm. That was a cool set.
Yes, I thought that was the one. I was like, okay, we're in a movie now.
I do think they should have had you walk into the same room we saw Next Gen, and then you pan over and go to that part of the room.
And I did like that the graphics were still kind of harkening back to old Trek.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I like
the Enterprise B panels and graphics.
Yeah.
Very old Trek.
Yeah, and that's what I like about I always say about Star Wars the motion picture is the graphics in there, their screens are very rudimentary. And so I like that here.
One aspect that bothered me slightly, and this is from a modern perspective, is there were supports breaking up the screen.
Yes.
You could see the screen continue behind them. Like you could see it continue behind them. But you look at Discovery, there's an even bigger screen all the way around. And Strange New Worlds, bigger screen. So you didn't need the supports, but logistics of the day.
The Sphere in Vegas has a million of those with no scene.
There's a Star Trek Generations video game that came out 3 years after the movie. Keith just sent it to me. I need to check that out. But 3 years after, who in 1997, because First Contact came out in 1996, who 3 years after this movie, 1 year after the better movie, was clamoring for a Generations video game?
Are you just doing stellar cartography? Is that the game? You just do?
Oh, that would be cool. That would be cool. Oh, the Klingon ship. It was nice to have it fully staffed in a way I don't think we've seen in any TV show or movie until now. There were so many Klingons on the bridge.
Yeah.
So many.
Yeah.
I know the whole Klingon crew, I think there's a picture in the books, the whole Klingon crew got together and did a group shot in the back lot, not on set.
I like the Klingon periscope. I remember.
That's from the old movies.
The Romulans had it in Balance of Terror.
Yeah, but Cruz had it.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
And then in Star Trek V, I think Spock had it.
I would
Approves again they're using the old set.
I will say my number one shock in the movie, I think, was the Duras sisters being killed.
Yeah.
So we're not going to see them on DS9.
No, they're done. We already saw them on DS9.
We did, but I meant we're not going to see him anymore.
No.
Not going to see him anymore.
Well, given the direction they're going with the Klingons on DS9, it makes sense that they're not part of that story. So to take them out now actually prevents extra wrenches in the Klingon arc coming up.
Okay.
To have them off the board.
Gotcha.
So I appreciate it from that perspective, but also I think they just want to put Lursen Better on the big screen because people love them so much. And I know it's sad they get 5 minutes of screen time and you kill them, but also, wasn't it cool that they made it to the big screen?
And they have one of the funniest lines in it when they're watching Jordy, they talk about how ugly humans are.
Oh, especially because it's Crusher that they're saying humans are revolting as they look at Crusher.
I know
who's the best looking member of the crew?
I know.
Other than arguably Jonathan Frakes.
It's a tough scale because her hair is always
Awesome.
like a 9.9, but even in this, it was like 9.99998.
I know.
It was that just made it so funny. And I was also at the same time, I've talked about this before too. It's like I think the last time we saw the Jurassic Sisters, I was like, you know what? Their teeth are a mess, and I know they're supposed to look bad, but does not slow me down at all.
Me neither.
I love them.
Me neither.
I just think they're fun and obviously attractive in their own way.
I can't remember if it was on USA or if it was on
the
Sci-Fi.
Klingons? I remember seeing that
You wanna
back
talk
in the
about
day. Yes, I do.
Did the Duras sisters cutouts?
Yes.
Yeah.
They did sell cutouts of them.
Oh, yeah.
Full size, life size for this
that's
movie.
awesome.
For this movie. But if you think about what Star Trek characters made it from the small screen to the big screen, other than main characters and a couple like Ogawa and Barclay and Guinan, like villains, whatever, it's Khan and it's them. End of list.
Yeah.
End of list.
Yeah.
Which, I think that's saying something. Even if their part was smaller than we'd like.
And they're not twins, though, right?
No.
They're just sisters.
Lursa's definitely older.
Yeah.
But I'll take either one. Or both. Picard is going to trade himself for Geordi. That always felt a little weird and awkward to me. And that they took the trade, but they're also going to beam him down to let him deal with Sauron. It kind of makes sense at first glance.
It's
but
kind
I
of
feel
like
like
when
you can tear
Kirk
it
goes
apart.
down earlier, you're like, well, he's going to die. I didn't think Picard was going to die, but it's like, okay, so we got to get him and Kirk together, which I know is the whole movie. But
Yeah. I did note that the Sauron set was not the Vasquez rocks that we're so used to.
at the first shot, I'm like, that's what I thought it was.
So
But
the
then-
problem with Vasquez is they do so many big panoramic shots, and you can see human civilization in Vasquez.
Yeah.
They said they had a really hard time finding that they had, like, we got to be within 30 miles of LA. Okay, 100 miles of LA. Okay, they ended up flying everybody to Vegas and driving them 150 miles from Vegas to get this.
Oh, wow.
And then they had to go back and refilm the Picard
right.
Sauron stuff because of the alternate ending that we'll talk about. But they had to find something that I do swear I saw a road in one shot. Maybe a dirt road, but still. But for the most part, you had to get someplace you could do these huge vistas. So it looked fantastic.
Yeah.
It looked
Because, I mean,
great.
now, obviously, they just CGI and everything.
Right.
We're finally catching up to my notes.
Well, we're past the point where you came in.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yes.
The Lifeform song that Data sings is another classic.
As I started to remember it as soon as it was being sung.
Troy takes the helm. I know I've mentioned this before
Yeah, it
off
all
screen.
clicked when it happened. But
You ever let her in the driver's seat, you're doomed, and they will do it once more in one of the other films. And I can tell you that the lore was already heavy enough that by the time that happens the second time, I'm in theaters going, no, why are you letting her drive? Sorry, I killed the microphone. But my first thought, as soon as they put her in, and it does not go well again, but I will say, as soon as she sat in, I was like, you know what you're doing. You know you're winding us up, that we all know you should not let Troy drive, and then you're letting her drive again.
Well, and I guess this is I wrote down saucer separation is the thing, although
They
as far as
couldn't
I know,
afford to do it more in the
the
series. They
Kelvin
wanted to.
universe, they do it again.
No,
And-
yeah.
And Star Trek Beyond, the last Star Trek movie so far, I feel like even the landing is almost the same of the saucer.
Yeah,
Although-
they did copy.
There's not as much, but yeah, it's very much like, hey, remember this? And then, at the end of the movie, the Enterprise is like no good, which is another thing. And I railed again. Star Trek 3, they blow it up. Maybe those are the only two so far.
Yeah, we've lost the original and the D.
They threaten it a lot. So, but I always love saucer separation.
I think it was get rid of the Enterprise D because we want something new for the movies.
Yes.
I put that I almost kind of wanted the bit where they just made the separation like 5 minutes long and they were circling around with the camera and music and just
I will say at least they didn't completely redo the bridge the way they did between the original series and the motion picture and say it's still the same ship, we promise.
I also put untroubling triple.
Oh, there was
I didn't.
That's much later, but yeah.
I didn't. Well, that's for the separation.
Oh, during the evacuation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So I just I didn't catch that back then. I wouldn't have gotten the reference.
I'm sure she got it fixed. I mean, Lorca has a triple on his desk in Discovery Season 1.
Huh.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, so I didn't realize they could do that until today.
Keith and I both made the joke as the Enterprise was fighting the Klingon ship, fire at will. How did she know Riker was in command now?
I think my exact words were, "How do they know where he is?"
Yeah.
Ah,
But
And I didn't hear you, so then I made the joke again because I suck and I'm late.
Something similar. The note that I put actually was for the retaliation. Would have been a good line for him to say, "Fire from Will." Yes.
We finally, because it's a movie, get Worf flipping over the railing,
Yes.
which was cool.
There was a lot more people being.
Oh, so
flung
much
around
more.
this.
So
Yeah.
you can tell they have the budget. And Geordi did the roll under the door again, but this is the Manchurian thing or whatever, where I always thought it was the same way it happened in the series, and this one was different. He was fully laying down in this
Yeah.
one. So it's different than the... Because, for the TV series, he did it multiple times, and he always landed on a knee.
Yeah.
This time, he lands fully laying down. Just kind of like,
I was about to say, it looked like he almost like a breakdancing pose.
Yes.
At the finish, like.
But we had to have Geordi rolling under the door, if you know he's being a fan. Because he's always last out, and he always waits.
Didn't realize that.
Sauron missed shooting Picard by a lot, and then he's just firing blindly into the haze.
Yeah.
It's like, give Picard every chance to get out.
Well, I mean, I think not firing would have given him a chance.
Yeah, that's,
So it's like
that's true.
It would have been weird if he hadn't. Like, I better just like start.
I did like his phaser, the way it was like.
Yeah.
Whatever. It looked,
Yeah, he had to hold his hand sideways.
Yeah,
like he's doing like the
Yeah.
pose. I love it.
I guess that was all the rage.
Well, they made it go sideways automatically.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It was the same year as Pulp Fiction, so I guess it was all the rage.
Yeah.
Back then.
But then it actually. It's hilarious.
I enjoyed the wreck of the saucer. I particularly love, first of all, when Worf and Riker get knocked down, and then they get up again. Sorry. I wanted
Did you do
them
it
to
on
be
purpose?
stay down. You're safer if you stay down. But I appreciated Data getting up and holding Troy in place. But then we
Yeah.
get the scene where they're hugging each other and looking at the
Yeah.
screen, which was a ridiculous shot, but I still loved it.
Well, that emotion shift.
Like just them like looking panicked. Oh, Riker's face as they're going down. The
Yeah.
angry look is just so
Yeah.
good. I really wanted to see 10 forward as they crashed. I know we saw like the crew quarters where people were sheltering, we saw the bridge,
Yeah.
but 10 forward's the very front.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see Guinan jumping behind the bar, those windows are blown out, everything's like, I guess budget, but 10 forward would have been a cool place to watch the wreck. I bet she's not in 10 forward, I bet she's hiding elsewhere. Because even though we didn't see her after the crash, I think we're all safe to assume she lived.
Yeah.
There's people sitting in 10-4 just having a drink as they're watching this, like.
Give me another.
Or the people that are getting drunk because they know their death is nigh. So you
Yeah.
see the people running in, give me all the whiskey, and she's trying to pour them as they're going down.
No Synthanol. Give me the real stuff.
Picard goes to stand on the bridge as Sauron walks across it, and he just stands there until Sauron notices
loved it.
him. And I know that's so they can do the shot with Kirk later,
Yeah.
but it's ridiculous that he just stands there.
I like the effect of it though. It's just sort of like he's distracted and like, wait a minute, what the hell? Just that reaction.
It's good. Why is Picard still in his uniform when he arrives in the Nexus? And Kirk's too. It's like they didn't want to spend the
yeah.
costume budget to give them alternate costumes.
Yeah.
But one note we just skipped there, for, or at least for me anyway.
Sure.
I noticed there was no music for that first fight scene, which I really
Oh, I
liked.
didn't notice.
It was kind of raw.
Da-da-da-da-da.
But not, I mean, nothing at all. Just that exchange.
It should have been the loud.
Yeah.
It should have been the original series. Well,
Yeah.
not the original series, because that would have telegraphed. In the second version, it should have been the
That
original
would have
series
been nice.
music.
But no, I mean, the fact that there wasn't anything at all
I
was
know.
interesting because I'm,
It
I'm,
felt
trying to, I'm trying to
gritty.
finish what I'm saying.
Sorry. I'm talking over you.
Yeah, but this, it was a grittier feel too.
Yeah. Gritty and grounded. I apologize, Keith.
Yeah.
It's another Quentin Tarantino influence.
Yeah. It took Star Trek into a different tone than we've
Yeah.
ever seen it before.
Yeah.
Picard's family is sure dressed ridiculous for the 24th century.
Yeah.
You know,
What
I,
the heck?
yeah. Well, I guess now that we know that it's imaginary in a sense.
Right. So that's
Maybe
what I
that's,
thought. Was just like,
Victorian.
Picard's the dad that makes them dress like that?
Yeah. I just started thinking, like, how long would it take to put something like that on them for, like, a Christmas morning or whatever, and just... But also just... I put 4 children as heaven? Question
5.
mark.
He had 5.
Jesus, that's what I thought at first, but there was just...
2 boys and 3 girls.
Was one of them the nephew, though?
No, that was the 6th child in the
Jesus.
scene. In the
I
book,
can't
it
even-
names all 5. We didn't get to hear their names in the movie,
my
other than
God.
background. So I did not look up every guest star in this movie, because there are a
Yeah.
lot, and I'm probably missing some that matter. But I do want to talk about a few guest stars in Picard's family.
Yeah.
Picard's wife was played by Kim Braden, who was already in Star Trek The Next Generation as the ensign that was talking to Picard about to Troy, about her dead husband and not able to get over the grief in the episode where Troy loses her empathic abilities. So Picard has a thing for one of the ensigns on the ship. I mean, it should have been Crusher, but she is redheaded, so, you know. But Picard having the thing for the ensign. That actress, Kim Braden, best known for this role and the Next Gen role, as well as the miniseries To Serve All My Days in Trog. She only has 29 IMDb credits, this being her last.
That's such a weird thing to do. If they don't want to confuse people, why would you? But
we can't have BB Besh, but we can have the ensign from season 4.
It just nobody you've seen. But
Janet Brooks.
Yeah.
Also, 2 of Picard's children have gone on to have significant acting careers. So the younger boy was played by Tom Decker, who was John Connor in Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Yep. Wow.
Also in Swimming with Sharks, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010, and Kaboom. He has 79 credits.
He was in 2 Seinfeld episodes. The one I can't remember exactly who he is. Yeah, as a kid.
Well, yeah, it would have to be.
And he also he was in the episode, if you guys remember, where
he was in 3 Seinfeld episodes. Sorry to correct you. You. He was in season 5, The Stand-In as Son.
Yep.
He was in season 7, The Wink as Bobby. And in season 9, is Bobby voice uncredited in The Maid.
Interesting.
He'll also do 2 episodes of Voyager as the same character both times.
Okay.
Next year from this, and he did one episode
from Seinfeld, apparently.
No, and not the same character from this either. Henry Burley in both, and he'll do an episode of Star Trek Picard. Different character, not his son.
As
different
Bobby.
character.
In the Wink when he played
as
Bobby.
Titus Ricca.
That's the one where George signs the thing at work for the Yankees and gets it sent out before the guy can. Yeah.
And then 2 seasons later, they had his voice uncredited.
Yeah, I don't know if that was.
Maybe it's just the same line reused somehow.
Maybe because that's the one where he's like, "I'll give it to you if Paul O'Neill hits 2 home runs," and then George goes and talks to Paul O'Neill. He's like, "2 home runs? Are you crazy? Why would? Who promises 2 home runs?" I didn't realize that was a lot. Yeah, but, and then Bobby. It ends up while we're on the sports part of this. Sports and Seinfeld part of the podcast. The second home run he hits is an inside the park home run, but then they decided to triple with an error, so Bobby's like, "No, I'm keeping it." But somehow Kramer ends up working it out, and he gets it back.
I will say the nephew was not the same actor that played him in the show, but he appeared younger, so I guess that makes sense. We're going to get a younger version of the nephew because he's further back in time. The other Picard's kid that has a career is Olivia Hack. I don't know which daughter she played of the 3 daughters.
Sounds familiar.
But she's best known for playing Cindy Brady in the Brady Bunch movie.
Okay.
She was Rhonda Wellington Lloyd in Hey Arnold, the Jungle Movie. She did did 8 episodes of The Gilmore Girls, and she plays Ty Lee in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes.
That one I knew would get you. Most of her credits are voice credits, and she's got credits all the way up into 2024. She also did a voice for 3 episodes of Star Wars Forces of Destiny in 2018, and 5 episodes of Star Wars The Clone Wars in 2012-2014. Care Bears Care-a-Lot, Scooby-Doo, all kinds of things. But yeah, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Ty Lee is probably her big. Bratz, she did all the Bratz stuff.
To go back to our guy, Thomas Decker, he also was in
Thomas.
2 episodes of Boston Public.
Oh,
With his old
spin-off
friend
of The
William
Practice.
Shatner. Yeah.
Wait, Shatner wasn't in Boston Public, he was in Boston Legal.
You're right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Although they both spun off of The Practice, so
Yes, that's what I was.
same universe.
So one of the notes I missed back there was it just seemed like an odd effect to have the rift come through there and just leave everything untouched except for the people. So you had the scaffolding, everything still standing, just kind of wiped through. Is that the purpose of it, or?
So, I don't know if I missed it, but did they say on screen how long the rift takes to move or how frequently it goes through the galaxy?
I didn't catch it.
Because in the book, they say, and this had to be in the script, that it passes through a galaxy every 38 years. They're not near the edge of the.
Say that in the movie.
They're not near the edge of the galaxy. It is not traveling faster than light, so less than warp speed. There's no way it passes through the galaxy every 38 years. That's bullcrap. Unless it goes slow through our galaxy and then really fast, or fast through parts of our galaxy, but just slow through a couple systems and really fast through the rest of it.
It could be. Well, actually, you just made me think of an explanation for that, but I just don't even understand exactly what do you mean passes through? Is it doing a circuit? Is it like? Does it bounce?
They also said it passes through every 38 years, but it's been 78 years since the Enterprise B. It should be 76 if that was going to line up.
Wait, so I mean, are they saying that goes to the same point every 38 years,
Apparently,
or are they saying that
it has a set thing it travels along, which we saw it. It was not traveling faster than light, not at all. You could see it visibly moving. Yeah. So it doesn't make any sense. If you'd said it, I guess you can't say it travels through our galaxy every 38 million years because it. But
Are you saying it should be faster or slower?
It should be a hell of a lot faster, like way faster than light if it's traveling every 38 years in our galaxy. It doesn't make any sense the way they say it travels. They should say it travels through the star system every 38 years. I would buy that, but they did. That's not what they said. They said through our galaxy. So some bad writing there. Kirk in the Nexus. That house. I was trying to pinpoint when that's taking place, his relationship with Antonia. Is that between the motion picture and Wrath of Khan? I don't think it could be before the motion picture. Because he was there for 4 years with her, where he was on a starship and he went back to Starfleet.
He said, well, I mean, he gave a timeline saying it was 9 years ago.
Right. But I'm not sure what the timeline of Star Trek 2 through 6 are. And I'm trying to figure out where in that timeline of the films, because it would have to be during the films, he took 4 years out of Starfleet and then went back.
Is it between Search for Spock and Voyage Home?
No, because those take place like
they're
almost
back to
concurrently.
back to back. That's right. Yeah.
But after Voyage Home, that's not 7 years before 6. I don't think it lines up in the canon.
Right, but he's on Enterprise B, doing the christening. So he's saying 9 years before that.
Yes. But I don't think it lines up in the canon that he was out of Starfleet for 4 years in the middle of the films. I think it makes more sense if it was between the motion picture and the series, but then he was an admiral and he didn't quit Starfleet. And after the motion picture, they gave him back the Enterprise, so why would he quit then?
Right.
It just doesn't feel like it fits the canon. I buy that he had a house we didn't know about. I buy that he had a love we didn't know about. I just think it doesn't quite fit if he left Starfleet for 4 years to woo her. Or I guess you could say he hadn't left Starfleet the whole 4 years. Maybe he was dating her while he was captain, and then he left Starfleet temporarily to be with her, and then decided to go back.
Well, and this is a time frame that only exists in the Nexus, though, right?
No. He's talking about real life. He was with Antonia. They had to have dated while he was in Starfleet. For this to make sense, they had to have dated while he was in Starfleet, and then he briefly quit for, I don't know, a couple of months tops, and then he went back. It just doesn't quite line up.
Do we think that, I guess we've had a little taste of Picard looking, but Picard's thinking about this because his brother and his nephew
are
died,
dead,
so that's bringing up everything. Yeah. Kirk, obviously, we've been there from going all the way back to the Naked Time. You know, he was already having those thoughts that very similar to the Pike ones as we discussed earlier. So,
well, yeah, I don't buy that Picard wants kids through most of the series.
No, and
you're right.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was going. Yeah.
But I agree with you. If Robert's just died, Robert and Renee have just died, and the family line's ended, that would be a time he'd think about having kids.
Yeah, and I wanted both of those scenes to resonate more for me, but they didn't.
Right. I was going to say
sorry, I would say like the Naked Time resonates more. Like at that point, you're like, yeah, this guy just wants to. Yeah, the Cage or Menagerie, take your choice, also resonates better, I think, with Pike. But and then there's other. I mean, Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock, for that matter. Kirk gets deeper into it, and again, I think this goes to your point, also, Jimmy, about if this was Carol Marcus, then you're bringing it all back together, or Ruth or whoever, somebody.
Or Edith Keeler.
Well, instead of us trying to figure out, where the hell was this? Sorry, Keith, you were going to say that.
No, it seems so easy now. The Nexus, the idea of that this is supposed to be the most tempting possible thing. Whoopi selling this as being this is going to give you exactly what you want. You're never going to want to leave or look back. Or Picard didn't. It didn't even take him like a few minutes to go like, all right, well, this is all right, but I guess I can go. I kind of want to do this other thing.
Yeah.
In the book, it does a better job of selling that. Yeah.
Your pitch sounded so much better. The idea of there being maybe a loop of the different relationships or something.
Yeah.
Like going through something that seemed more tempting than just hanging out and they could just walk out. They just hop on some horses and go, all right, well, we're done. And just...
And managed to get back to the planet before the Nexus hit the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. Like, don't you think you have to leave the Nexus where the Nexus is?
Oh my god! Well, yeah.
Also, Kirk's in the Nexus maybe Soren doesn't know that, but then they come back and Picard says, wait, I've got another way to get you to the Nexus. We're going to put you on a highly armored shuttle. We'll fly at it, and as the shuttle's breaking apart, we'll just eject you into the Nexus, and you're fine, because that worked for Kirk. Just getting ejected out of the size of the Enterprise B, you don't have to ruin a planet to get to the Nexus.
Yeah.
The Nexus itself does not stand up to scrutiny.
Yeah.
It's a cool idea that falls apart from logic. Rushed. I think we talked about Brandon Braga and Ron D. Moore wrote this with Rick Berman getting a story by credit as well, while they were also writing Season 7 and Season 6, and they were at the series finale.
Yeah.
Interesting notes from the behind the scenes is Berman actually commissioned 2 separate scripts at the same time. Technically 3, but Michael Piller started and then dropped out of the running because he was running DS9. And Berman helped on all of them, and then they were going to decide which script was best, and that was going to be the first movie, and the second best script would be the second movie. They'd retool it to make it better. The other writer, you're never going to guess who was the other writer in the mix.
Nimoy?
Nope.
DC Fontana?
No, but that would have been good. Maurice Hurley.
Oh!
The guy from the documentary that we all found so awful and annoying and such a pain. They brought him in. His script did involve the TOS crew. His script was more balanced, and it was a mystery of that happened in their era and Picard era, and we go back and forth as they're solving the mystery together,
They
which would have been pretty cool.
Next Gen, right? Like in the final season, didn't they do something like that? That one of the episodes.
Well, you're talking about the series finale, probably.
Yes,
Maybe they stole Maurice Hurley's idea for the series finale.
Okay, that makes sense.
But yes, I actually wrote that would have been all good things. Also, apparently, Brandon Braga and Randy Moore and the whole crew pitched destroying the Enterprise D at the end of Season 6 and having a new ship for Season 7, and they just said budget, it wasn't going to work, so they made him wait till the movie. Originally, the version of this, the first version of the script that Randy Moore and Brandon Braga wrote, was going to be Kirk versus Picard, not knowing that they were both fighting the crews were fighting each other, which, that's very comic book fan service.
Yeah.
Glad they didn't do that.
Yeah, that's very...
That'd been kind of frustrating, but
Do you
at
think
the same time.
But they did not end up using Maurice Hurley's script for the second movie.
Now I'm back on the saucer on that planet. Does the Starfleet go out and then go ahead and just take all the parts out of it and everything, or they just leave it there?
Wait for Star Trek Picard.
Okay.
I'm not kidding.
No, I believe
I'm not kidding. We will find out the fate of the saucer in Star Trek
Don't
Picard.
tell me anything then.
That's it.
Too late.
I've already seen it all. I've already seen it all.
Don't tell me anything more.
All right.
I've seen it all.
I was going to say the...
Not till like the end of Star Trek Picard, but yeah, you're gonna find out the fate. So
I only got a couple more
the
notes.
fight with Kirk and Picard and Soren, the stunt doubles, and even the horse jumping. The stunt doubles were TOS level bad in
funny,
HD.
I thought it was a weird for a movie to be like, oh, we're doing a movie, and I know we blow a bunch of ships up, but for the main part at the end to just be, I guess it makes sense if you got Shatner, it should be old school fisticuffs.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even in the deleted scene or whatever, or the alternate ending, he did the two-handed boom.
We did watch the alternate ending where he just gets shot in the back instead of falling off a bridge.
I'm sure audiences like the two-handed thing, but they did not like him getting shot in the back.
No, especially when he's like, 24th century isn't so hard. Psh. I get why they refilmed.
Yeah,
neither of the books had like much of a fight at all. It was just Picard runs to the platform, Kirk fights Soren, the platform disappears, and he's standing in midair. Kirk turns it back on and gets shot in the back. Like, it's so quick.
It very relied on the cloaking devices in this movie also.
Oh, yeah.
And as much as I know a big part of the movie was let's get Shatner and Picard together, I think for Shatner, he probably was like, all right, I'll do it, but I get to ride a horse.
Probably. And Picard, Stewart likes riding horses too.
Oh, okay, well, there you go, yeah.
Yeah, I do love something the junior novelization did, the regular didn't, was Picard, as he got on his horse, he would have preferred an English saddle, but he could make a Western saddle work. I was like, I don't know why John Vornholt threw that in, but I liked it.
That's funny.
Where were they riding off before they disappeared out of the Nexus?
That's exactly.
Let's go back. We're going to ride? Okay.
Oh, you reminded what I wanted to say then, because it's just very strange how knowledgeable they had to be for everything. It's like, how do you work it? How do you just know you can just ride a horse and say, I want to go to this thing and...
Yeah, well, that is mentally controlled, so I get that a little bit better.
But So I guess, did they have a talk about how they're going to get there then?
No.
We need to go exactly to this point. And so how do you pull the other guy to...
I think because the other guy had the same intention of I'm going back with him to do this thing.
Yeah.
But would it be funny if Kirk showed up 5 minutes late? Because that's just Kirk's style. I've still got 4 alternate episodes we haven't covered, but I'm going to throw that in the mix. That Picard thinks he hasn't come back, and then he does. Why do we need to see the crash again after they come back? That didn't make sense.
I agree.
They don't have time for all of this. All the fighting. So Picard fighting Sauron the first time was a certain amount of time. And I do think the alternate ending might have been roughly the same, but this ending with them doing the bridge and everything was way longer. And I'm like, they don't have time for all of that. Picard going to save Kirk.
I put also that Kirk learned to use his fists. So they, for the I guess the ending that made it to the screen.
Yeah.
He's just mostly fist fighting the entire time instead of using
Yep.
Well, he learned that from Picard.
Yeah.
Why all the barrels next to the thing to blow up? Other than you wanted more debate.
Yeah.
I've still got a bunch of notes from the book I'll jump to, and alternate episodes, but my final note for the movie, final 3 notes, is that last scene, Spot. We get to Spot again. Good emotional ending.
I also cheered up there. No surprise.
I'm glad we ended on Picard and Riker, and I love, it so sticks in my head of, Picard saying, we only live a certain whatever, and Riker saying, speak for yourself, I plan to live forever. I love Riker so much, and that line is the epitome of Riker to me.
Yep, yes it is.
And then just Picard's back in the old uniform for some reason in that scene.
I just have a few notes. I like when they asked Data if he's having some kind of malfunction, which made me think of, this was a few years before, but Full Metal Jacket when...
That's what
are you having some kind of mental malfunction, numbnuts? So that's what I thought.
What is your major malfunction?
What is your major malfunction?
Nice.
And then, I can't remember who says this. It might be Kirk says, we're all going to die sometime, which was always my mom's response. Or actually, several people, but my mom...
Soren said that.
It was... Okay. I feel like my mom's... I know... My mom probably said it more than anybody else I know, even though she's made me fear everything so that I don't die. Which is another entirely different concept. But yeah, he's like, we're all going to die sometime. Because I feel like that's people that smoke or whatever are like, well, I don't know if you should smoke. Well, we're going to die of something. I'm like, well, yeah, but you don't drive down the wrong way down a one-way street either. So, and then I have 2 more. One more. I wanted, while we're on the nostalgia thing, after Kirk dies the second time, I wanted Picard to create a gravestone for him that matched from where
James R. Kirk?
Yeah, well, maybe not to match it. Correct the mistake, but also match the look of that. I really wanted that.
Sorry, he doesn't have godlike powers.
Yeah. Well, I just want him to phaser it somehow, find a rock and do it. But
disruptor it.
Yeah. And then my other episode was, this one I surprised no one. I just wanted a Duras Sisters movie. And we, in this day and age now, if you MCU it, the Duras Sisters get a movie.
Yeah.
And it's Florence Pugh.
Or a miniseries, at least.
Yeah.
On Paramount Plus.
Yeah, it's Florence Pugh and Jennifer Lawrence. Done.
Yeah.
Make it so.
I've got quite a few things left.
Okay, go ahead.
I thought you had quite a few quibbles about that. Oh.
Well, that too. I'm surprised that neither of you mentioned that they were using all the mountain climbing stuff. Like rappelling. So what was that? Which
Star Trek 5.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I noticed that they worked in a rappelling scene for that, and even in the alternate one, especially, he was much more heavily having to scale back up. I would have loved if he made a quip about.
It also
having
made
done
me
that
think.
Before.
Oh, Malcolm McDowell was in Cliffhanger, but that was John Lithgow that was the bad guy. So yeah.
That's funny. One of you mentioned the Wile E. Coyote-ness of them just being there.
If those barrels were full of fireworks, that would have been Wile E. Coyote.
But,
I just wanted him to because he gets the look on his face when he realizes, oh no.
But Soren holds up a sign that reads "Yipe." Something like that.
He brought it back from the Nexus with him.
Oh, I guess Daffy Duck's the one who used to say, "Mother."
Couldn't Soren now just come out of the Nexus before that and stop them?
Right.
And then there's 3 Sorons?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, no, because Guinan can't come back because there's already an Echo, blah, blah, blah. Which means...
You don't understand how the Nexus works.
Which means Soron's Echoes are in the Nexus, so he can't go back in there, right? Even if he succeeds, he can't get back in.
Yeah, right?
What the... I wanted to hear
I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Oh my god. So I put Spot was comfortable before he was found.
Yes.
So just the whole time he's kind of like doing that thing where a cat does, like, okay, I'm fine. I want to be put down now.
Also, there's probably a lot of cats and dogs in the Enterprise that they're looking for Spot.
Yeah.
Nah, they were probably looking for all of them.
That makes sense.
I wanted to see a turtle and a bunny too.
Picard and Riker talking about the captain's chair.
Yeah.
They touch it and launch a pod. So
Then there's Spot just gets set up. Spot! Data's screaming. No, it's not Spot. It's Barclay.
yeah. So my last three or last several notes were things I was thinking about during the alternate ending, the actual alternate ending. Yeah, I had the double axe handles. Talking about that, of course.
Yep.
So I think you were explaining what was happening there that didn't really seem to be shown on the screen. So Picard in the alternate, was he changing the way the rocket was going to go, or is that essentially what happened?
Yeah. So in the alternate, the rocket still flies, but he's changing the trajectory, so it just like turns around and crashes into the jumbo.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me than him somehow
engage.
Yeah,
Because he can't read the readouts. That's part of the plot in the stories. He can't read the panel. He's just hitting buttons to see what happens. And the reason Kirk can uncloak it is there's far fewer buttons on the remote than there is on the panel.
Okay, it did look like he was just going, okay, I'm just going to keep doing things until something happens.
Yeah, no, I think that both actors played it as we don't know what we're hitting.
Okay.
But yeah, it didn't translate necessarily.
Well, there we are. That's right. It's just like I don't like how did either of those plans work? What Picard was doing to do something that complicated of either one redirecting the probe.
So in the book, where it explains it more, he hit buttons till he saw crosshairs and trajectory, and then he hit other buttons and saw it move, and was like, okay, I think this is how, and then, yeah. He didn't know what he was doing. The clamps engage feels less realistic to me than just like, oh, wait, I'm making it move now. Let me hit this arrow button. Okay, that's redoing it.
Hard to say was more realistic. So we're the exact wording of what you're saying is kind of what I was
hard to troubleshoot on the fly, yeah.
And which one's more realistic? Hard to say, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
I saw that was your last note.
Yeah.
I'll get through my last few. Directed by David Carson, who directed, after Nimoy turned it down, he directed a number of episodes of both Next Gen and DS9.
Okay.
That we've talked about him before, so I won't go too deep into him, but yeah. These are mostly alternate things. I think it would be cool in Star Trek Picard if he's still in the Nexus and everything's been a lie the last 30 years. That would have been a cool thing to do. Or Kirk either is in the Nexus or survives something so he can continue in some way.
While we're here, let me throw one more, Mike Garrett. Why wouldn't Picard go back to the Inner Light Hum, where he did have a family, or still has a family, right?
That was somebody else's life. He was just remembering it.
That's okay.
Also, wouldn't it have been cool if Harriman had gone and Kirk stayed in the captain's chair, and then Harriman died, and then Kirk stayed captain of the Enterprise B, and we did some more movies with Kirk as the captain. Half my other episodes just Kirk lives. In terms of the books, there is a novelization, an additional scene at the end where Guinan and Picard talk in his ruined office, and I think that would have been really nice to have to bookend it and have a little more looking. And then there's a lot of behind-the-scenes notes. We covered a lot of them in our discussion already, but they talked about this was the first Star Trek movie that really used CGI. So the stellar photography, blue screen, CGI. They still use the model of the Enterprise D in many shots, but to make it like stretch as it goes to warp, it looked better in the film because they actually used CGI for it to stretch the ship in a way they never did for the TV show.
You started me down the path of thinking they could have literally gone anywhere at any time, apparently.
Yeah.
Why cut it that close? I mean, there's so many things they could have done years before.
They could have gone back and killed Hitler.
Yeah. To that effect.
Go back to a week before Renee and Robert die. Tell somebody to go get a lockdown on Sauron while you're calling home and saying, watch out for the fire, stay out of the barn.
And they could have saved Edith Killer if they killed Hitler.
And that's part of the Guinan and Picard's final scene in the book is he's like, I didn't think about it at the time. I could have gone back and saved Robert and Renee. And she's like, no, things are meant to happen. That was meant to happen. It was better to be focused on the mission and not, because you would endlessly second guess yourself if you were going that way.
I wonder if, I can't remember which Austin Powers it is, where he keeps coming back a couple minutes and he keeps screwing it up.
Yes.
And then finally he gets it right.
Yes.
This is kind of that. Except they get it right the second time.
I guess there's also the argument that can be made that yes, I mean this is a time when he knows exactly what was going to happen. And maybe if I tweak this one thing, or there's always the law of I have to change as little as possible, otherwise
step on a butterfly or whatever.
But he doesn't know. I mean, if you're going to change anything at all, how do you know that wasn't?
Yeah.
The junior novelization
Right.
has some extra Chekhov and Scotty dialogue after Kirk dies. And it's not as we don't really get the Kirk heroic moment in the junior because they're simplifying and setting it down. I mean, they were definitely working off different scripts for both of these novelizations. I feel like this got a closer to air date script, which makes sense because I could do this in the weekend. I really could. I'm not being mean. I just really could do it in the weekend.
Yeah.
Much simpler. There were two lines that notably they changed for the young adult that were different from both, that were the same from the adult and the movie.
Yeah.
One was where Sauron punches the Duras sister, and she says, "For your sake, I hope you're initiating a mating ritual." And the young adult, it says, "For your sake, I hope you're initiating a game." Which I was like, oh. And then when the ship's going down and Data goes, "Oh shit!" And the young adult, it's uh-oh. And I was like, oh, come on, really? I know you're trying to tone it down. I did want to give one example to show you how simplified these are. I'm just going to read a brief portion that's the same scene in both of these books. So, Picard turned back to Kirk and cradled the wounded man's head in his lap. I could have done lots of scenes. I chose the Kirk death. Kirk's eyes flickered open. He drew a ragged, hitching breath. Nice shot. He coughed, closing his eyes at the pain. Small, bright red bubbles appeared in the corner of his graying eyes. "I'll find a way to contact the Enterprise," Picard said, knowing he could find no way. It was hopeless. The legendary captain was finally, truly dying. The fact filled him with strange sorrow, despite the fact he'd always considered James Kirk dead. Despite the brevity of the encounter, he felt a deep kinship with the man. "You're going to be all right." Kirk spoke softly again, so softly that Picard leaned closer to hear. "Did we do it? Did we make a difference?" "Yes." Picard took a breath that caught in his throat. "Thank you. Least I could do." Fair captain of the Enterprise. Racked by a spasm of pain, he coughed once more, deep gurgling sound emanating from his lungs. Fresh blood flecked on his lips. "Try to hang on," Picard urged. He took the dying man's cool hand in his own. Kirk stared sightlessly up at the sky, a pane of sunlight illuminating his features. All suffering seemed to leave him. His expression grew reflective, peaceful. In a distant jungle, a lone bird burst into song. "It's all right." Kirk made a feeble attempt to pat the other captain's hand, trying, Picard realized, to comfort his companion. "I've lived long enough for 100 lifetimes." A faint grin spread over his face. It was fun. And he died, releasing a slow, satisfied breath in Picard's arms. So, the level of description and getting inside their heads. This is the same scene in the junior novelization. This is obviously going to be a lot quicker.
Well, that's that.
Picard rushed back to Captain Kirk and cradled his head in his arms. "Nice shot," rasped Kirk. He coughed and his eyelids fluttered. "Try to hang on," said Picard. "I'll find a way to contact the Enterprise." Kirk didn't seem to hear him. "Did we do it? Did we make a difference?" "Yes," whispered Picard. "Thank you. Least I can do for a captain of the Enterprise." Kirk coughed and his breathing sounded worse. Instead of all the flowery, his breathing sounded worse. "You're all right," said Picard. But they both knew he was lying. Kirk looked up at the sky at the warm sun. He smiled and seemed to be at peace. "It was fun," he said. Captain James T. Kirk had cheated death so many times, but not this time. He died in Captain Picard's arms. I'm sorry, it was just cheesy as hell in this version, and so many scenes felt like that.
There's lots of blood, though. I mean, they're in the other version.
Yeah.
It's all about, like, you know, I don't know. That one sounds more like a romance novel, is it all? Like a ship scene there.
You're right, it does. The romance novel, I get that. Let's do the rankings. Who are we going to drink with for this movie?
Originally it was going to be Spot, because it's always Spot, but I got to go with those. Well, I can't have it with the Duras sisters, so I can say Spot, yeah.
I mean,
I'll pour one out for the Duras sisters when I have my drink with Spot.
I mean, I know Kirk died, but it's Kirk, obviously. He had all the best lines, all the best stuff, and if he survives this, I'm going to have a drink with him.
Well, yeah.
Well, I would use the Nexus to have a drink with the Duras sisters.
There
Yeah, you go back and...
So are you doing the Duras sisters?
I don't know. I
Duras sisters Nexus?
haven't thought about it yet.
You don't pre-plan?
Not in this case. Probably Guinan. I mean,
Guinan's a good answer.
Yeah.
She'll pour you a revolting drink you won't like.
Yeah.
Who is your annoyance? Sauron, right?
Yeah, that's the only one.
There's so many different ways he could have solved this without killing 250 million people.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Ranking the movie, and this is our film ranking spreadsheet, so ranking against other films.
All right.
I'm going to start with Search for Spock. Better or worse than Search for Spock?
Isn't it?
I'm not touching our top three because it's not going to beat them.
Are you sure?
Yes. Rathacon, Voyage Home, Undiscovered Country, it's not going to touch.
I mean,
It's not. It's not.
I
just don't remember it well enough right now.
I'm a little bit torn, to be honest.
It's closer than I would think.
Yeah. We put Search for Spock above the motion picture, for reference.
Okay.
And
Then
we-
I'm going below.
Below Search for Spock?
Yeah.
Above Motion Picture?
I'm going to go below motion picture, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the motion picture so much. I agree in that
Yeah.
regard.
I would have gone above, but no.
Above Search for Spock?
Yes.
Above Undiscovered Country?
Probably not.
Okay. Below Motion Picture's Final Frontier is our bottom at the moment.
I'd put it above that for sure.
I am inclined to agree with Steven. I know we could do a compromise where I put it above Motion Picture, below Search for Spock, but I think I want to put it below. The motion picture is just so special to me. I think I got to put it below that. And above Final Frontier. I think we can go ahead and put Nemesis and Insurrection down 8 and 9 right now. But I think First Contact we're going to be going higher. I think that one for me might be number 2. Might be number 2 after Ethicon. We'll get to that though. Next week, Star Trek Deep Space Nine Defiant. I'm going to change IMDb's description just slightly to make it better. Riker Jonathan Frakes was busy. Riker arrives on the station to requisition the Defiant in order to fight the Maquis. Sisko assists Gul Dukat on Cardassia Prime to prevent the ship from entering Cardassian territory.
Interesting.
Well, that would have been a nice surprise, but just like right out the...
Don't break down what I said too much because I realize I just said too much if you think about it, so don't think about it.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Frakes is in it.
Yeah, that was distracting enough. Once I was like
Good.
what? I didn't even...
Stay distracted. Stay distracted. Jonathan Frakes, Riker himself, will be in Defiant. And we only have 2 episodes to review before Voyager starts, so...
Wow.
Live long. Wow. Until then, live long.
Because
Not in the Nexus, in real life.
Yeah, because you only live twice. And prosper.
Speak for yourself. I plan to live 80 times. Well, that forever's still just once. I plan to live 80 times. I believe in reincarnation. It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?